So I want to talk a little bit about this piece in the New York Times and the anti-trans rhetoric that's been going around lately, a little more broadly. This is a tweet from Alan MacLoud, another excellent follow on Twitter if you guys aren't following him, at Alan R. MacLoud. He's Mint Press News, by the way. He often posts about foreign policy, but he also has posted a lot of media criticism and things of that like. Great follow on Twitter. This is truly the dumbest thing that the New York Times has published in hours. I love that line. In hours. Far right and far left agree on one thing: women don't count. He goes on to say the article's premise, don't bother reading it, is the far right have taken away women's bodily autonomy, yes, but the far left say trans women are women, so they're as bad as each other. Oh gosh, you guys, I've been all over the map today. I meant to be showing you this. You can see here the New York Times piece. The far right and far left agree on one thing: women don't count. And there's Alan's breakdown that I just read to you verbatim. This notion that supporting trans rights is somehow anti-woman is one of the most absurd notions that I have ever heard on the surface. And that's why they have to jump to these very specific things to try to frame the argument in a way that would not make any sense at all if they weren't jumping to these specific things. So they'll go to school sports and they'll say, well, you don't want someone way stronger and bigger beating up on someone else. It's like, yeah, nobody wants that. That's why we have weight classes in boxing, right? No one wants to see someone getting pummeled by someone 100 pounds bigger than them. No one wants to see that. So they take advantage of that sympathy that people have, and they disingenuously plug in their cultural, nonsensical, incoherent anti-trans bigotry as though that is the natural conclusion of not wanting to see someone get beat up. Because if they just came out and said what they really think on the surface, it wouldn't land so well, right? So they have to go to these very specific things and misframe it all in order to make their incoherence seem coherent. So this is another one of those, right? Oh, if you support trans rights, you don't support women. Again, it's just absurd on the surface, and the New York Times ought to be ashamed of themselves. That's by Pamela Paul. Shame on you, Pamela Paul. It also does this thing that major media outlets have done as long as I've been paying attention to politics, where they equate far left with far right, as though fascist white nationalists are somehow tantamount to people who want fucking healthcare and education and better treatment of workers. As though those two things are equally extreme. So it's a false sort of, comparison that a lot of these outlets like to make, and the New York Times does it here in a very incoherent way. And it plays right into a lot of the anti-trans bigotry that has been spewed from right-wing politicians and pop culture and right-wing media outlets in increasing numbers, I would say, over the last maybe year or so. And I don't want to minimize that that's been prevalent for a long time, but it seems like there's been a very intentional push on the right to start pushing these absurd narratives about drag shows, or implying that all members of the LGBTQ community are somehow grooming children. We're going to get into that one in a little bit too, but these absurd, totally baseless, totally incoherent notions that are obviously homophobic and anti-LGBTQ on the surface. And, I think they know that there's electoral value in that for them. I think they're trying to rally up their base, and a number of reasons that the timing is now, but it's very harmful and dangerous for the LGBTQ community. Obviously, talks of registries and things like that, they're trying to frame the community as child abusers, which again, completely baseless. They can't point to any facts or evidence that back that up. Of course they can't. But they think if they just attack it in pop culture settings and in the media as much as possible, that it will somehow start to land. I just want to show some examples of the hypocrisy, you guys. And I know that some of this is anecdotal, but I just want to show you how it really is the religious right that is actually grooming children on a regular basis, and engaging in narratives that dehumanize children and sexualize children. That's happening on the right on a very regular basis. So we're just going to take a couple looks at examples here. Again, you guys, I know this is anecdotal, but I wanted to show you guys this. Steven Crowder tweets out best Halloween costume, or actually, first I'll read the initial one. He says, the left has made it clear that they are targeting your kids. They must be protected from the filth, immorality, and propaganda they're being taught to accept no more. What revolting, repulsive language Stephen engages in there. Hardly surprising from that clown. The Serfs retweet this with a screenshot of a poll that Stephen had previously put up, where he asks, best Halloween costume, slutty Trump, slutty Greta Thunberg, slutty AOC, or slutty Gerald Morgan Jr. So who's really sexualizing children? Who's really constantly engaging in this disgusting practice, right? Again, a few anecdotal examples here. New York Post says glamorous heir. This is going to be particular people, how they respond to one article and how they respond to another, and you'll kind of see the pattern. Glamorous heiress 45 charged with having sex with 14-year-old boy 4 times in one day. That's a New York Post clickbait article, obviously. This guy says, did the boy complain? So his take on a 14-year-old boy being raped by a 45-year-old is, well, he didn't complain, right? He probably liked it. That's his take there. But to a tweet that says, White House invites a gay high school graduate to speak who praises his openly gay 5th grade teacher for providing him support he needed to understand his identity in grade school. This guy says groomer. Okay, you see the trend we're about to establish? Once again, response to that same New York Post piece. I would have hit that at 14 from B.T. Hamilton. So we're going to minimize this instance of actual grooming and sexualizing a child and statutory rape. That's good. He's saying I would have done it too. And then a series of accusations where BT is saying groomer to undoubtedly posts about the LGBTQ community. Another one here. This one, Josh. I know it's wrong, but I also remember being 14. Kids today don't know how good they have it. So he's saying this kid has it good because a 45-year-old statutorily, is that even a word, statutorily? A 45-year-old committed statutory rape against this 14-year-old. He's like, oh, lucky 14-year-old. That's his response there. When PolitiFact tweets out, in the wake of Florida's Don't Say Gay law, the term grooming has been used to imply people who discuss LGBTQ topics are deliberately preying on children. That's not what grooming is. He says groomer sympathizers. Not a good look. So again, he's applauding a 14-year-old for being raped, but he thinks that the LGBTQ community is engaging in grooming. Average Joe says, where were these women when I was 14? With a laughing emoji. And then Average Joe retweets Matt Walsh, total clown show if you don't know Matt, who says, why do men need to cross-dress around kids at all? What is the scenario where you'd prefer to have a man dressed as a woman instead of just an actual woman reading to kids? Can you explain? Well, it's fascinating that Matt's the one attempting to distinguish a difference there when these people also will tell you that their political ideology is rooted in freedom and liberty, right? But don't you wear women's clothes around my kids. Again, the hypocrisies are endless. They just never fucking stop. And they say many of these folks. No, I saw another thread with similar examples. So I know this is anecdotal, but I thought that was worth bringing to you all. And it just goes to point out some of the rank hypocrisy on the right when it comes to these narratives. And one other thing that I just wanted to get into, if there's one institution that is engaged in more grooming than any other, I would say it's probably the Catholic Church, right? systemically raping children and essentially implying to those kids that that's God's will, that that's what God wants you to do, that you're doing a good thing by allowing a Catholic priest to touch or rape you. How can people who are crying about groomers miss that target? Again, it just goes to point out the rank hypocrisy from the far right on these issues. A kid is in far more danger at a Catholic church than that kid is in danger at a drag show. I think every sensible person recognizes that, right? Another hypocrisy, just while we're on the church very quickly, Catholics are pro-life, right? They're pro-life. I tweeted this out the other day for those that didn't see it. They're pro-life if you simply choose to ignore the Inquisition and the Crusades and their endorsement of Hitler's final solution, and they're aiding his rise to power. Same, by the way, with Antonio Salazar and Mussolini, and there were Catholic fascist parties in the East Balkans. You cannot tell the story of fascism without including the papacy. But they're pro-life. They're pro-life. They endorsed the African slave trade. They supported the Rwandan genocide. At the height of the AIDS epidemic, they condemned the use of condoms. And we could circle back to the systemic rape and molestation of children thing. What about this is pro-life? What about this is pro-life? And by the way, you guys, and I've said this before too, but if there is one thing, if you want to pull a society out of poverty, there's one thing you must do. There are many things you can do that will be helpful, but there's one thing you absolutely must do if you want to pull a society out of poverty, as the Catholic Church very much likes to claim it is intending to do. That is empower women specifically over their reproductive choices. What has the Catholic Church stood on the front lines against for its entire existence? The right to choose. So massive hypocrites. Nothing about that party is pro-life. Was it pro-life to kill Galileo for being right, you guys? Or to kill Jan Hus for being a Protestant? Or to kill countless people for, homosexual acts or heresy or blasphemy or whatever they wanted to come up with? Was that pro-life? Burning people alive for disagreeing with your religion or for engaging in homosexual behavior? That's pro-life? I mean, again, it's just, I could go on and on and on and on, but you get the point. They're just massive fucking hypocrites on this stuff. And if anyone wants to target those who are grooming children in our society, you may want to start with the papacy, with the Catholic Church. Be a good place to start. So this push of anti-trans rhetoric, combined with the recent Supreme Court decisions, which have the potential to gut Obergefell and Lawrence, among other cases as well, I find to be terrifying for the LGBTQ community, and I encourage you all to stand with your LGBTQ comrades and make sure that they know that you have their back and that they don't live in a society that is completely full of these right-wing, deranged, dangerous maniacs who have a very loud voice when it comes to these issues. And again, I want to debunk every single element of that grooming rhetoric. It is incoherent and baseless on the surface, and you should not believe one iota of what the conservatives are saying about the LGBTQ community. So we will keep up with any developments in the laws of various states and things of that nature that are designed to attack the trans community. But I just want to encourage my audience to stand with your LGBTQ comrades as much as you possibly can.